This is Gail Morgan welcoming you to the Libertarian Counterpoint. Now, your host, James Just.
Welcome to the Libertarian Counterpoint. I'm Richard Fields. On the show, we have Kelly Cardin, who's a candidate for supervisor in the county of Kern in Southern California. Also, John Cameron, regular on Libertarian Counterpoint. Let's start out with you, Kelly. Tell us a little bit, first of all, about your background and heritage.
So, my mom is a Filipino immigrant. She came to America in 1969, the same year that we actually went to the moon, which is pretty cool. My grandparents were very poor, type of feed the children kind of poverty. My grandfather was a guerrilla fighter during World War II. My grandmother was just a homemaker. She was illiterate, didn't speak any language, or only spoke Tagalog, couldn't read or write in any language. But she died an American. So, she was, my grandfather was very proud of that. Like I said, my grandpa was a guerrilla fighter during World War II. He fought for his homeland when the Americans left. He was stuck. That was his home. So he always, talk about how important it was to understand what being an American meant. He really, his happiest day was when the Americans came home, or when the Americans, I should say, were returned to the Philippines. That's really what his happiest day of his life, not his 13 kids or his 200 some odd 3 generations worth of grandkids. It was the Americans coming back because they meant there was a future. They came here. My mom moved to, she married an American serviceman when she was a teenager, came to America, met my dad in Los Angeles in the early 80s. My dad actually passed away 2 months after I was born from melanoma. And my mom met my stepdad in this little town that I've grown up in. I've lived in this little town called Roseman my whole life. I have 4 children. All my kids actually go to the same elementary school that I went to, that my stepdad went to, that his siblings went to. It's kind of a cool little town. My mom came from absolutely nothing. She's done her own business for 30 years now here in town. It's pretty impressive. I'm proud of being from here.
Tell us a little bit about your town, Roseman.
So Roseman's a small little desert community. We're about 15,000 people. We're on the east side of the main gate of Edwards Air Force Base. We're 11 miles north of Lancaster in LA County, and we are the southeastern region of the desert. It is hot.
Well, Kern County isn't it the largest county in California geographically?
I think San Bernardino County is, but I guess I'm not 100% certain. Kern County is a lot of things. It's the second most. They grow more agriculture in Kern County than all but Fresno County in the entire country. We pump more oil than the state of Oklahoma. We generate more renewable energy than anywhere else in the state and most places in the country as well. Elon Musk has SpaceX here, so we get to see a lot of those things. We actually have a spaceport about 14 minutes from my house in Mojave, California. Pretty cool little town,
Tell us why you're running for county supervisor in this wonderfully diverse county.
Yeah, so I was really pissed off, Richard, at the water increases this year. I have, like I said, a lot of kids. Man, a water bill affects me a lot. We own my family business, we own my home. So I'm getting hit twice on these ridiculous water increases. So what happened is I got really involved with the water increase, going to the meetings, helping organize protests to try to keep the water rates down. But what happened was I was so angry that I found myself literally yelling at the men on the board. But there's a problem with that when you live in a town like mine, right? The men on the board it was a man who educated my dad. My dad's 70. He was one of my dad's high school teachers, and he was my high school teacher. Another man on the board has been a local pastor here for 50 years. I went to his church. These are men that I've known my whole life. And another guy on the board is a friend of mine. We've known each other since 6th grade. So it started off with a water board, and I was yelling at these people that I know and respect, right? Then it hit me. They don't have anything to do with it. Gavin Newsom is the one who's ruining our water in this state. These outrageous restrictions telling everyone that they can only take water from the reclamation project. We used to pump 70% of our ground, 75% of our water in my town used to come from the ground. Now only 5% comes from the ground, and the rest comes from the reclamation project. It's going to cause our bill in this town to go about 80% over the next 5 years. And so I said, how do I fix this? I'm going to go to 3 county. I'm going to go for county board. I have a very unpopular county supervisor named Zach Scribner. Literally everyone that I've ever talked to has said the only time they've ever seen him was when he comes to our town for the parade. He's walked in front of my store every year since 2009, and he's never stepped foot inside our building. He's only walked by to get into the parade.
Tell us a little bit about the race itself. Is it a district race, or is it for the entire county?
Well, so it's eventually going to be the entire state. The Democratic governor is changing all of the rules where all of our water comes from.
I'm talking about the county supervisor race.
The county supervisor race is the county supervisor race. Okay.
I thought you said rates. I'm sorry. See, that's what I was talking about. Some words. So it's my win total is 24,000 votes. Kevin McCarthy is actually my congressman. So Kern County is considered one of the most conservative districts in the state, but it's not. It's just very anti-democratic, and that's perfectly fine. Most people aren't happy with the Republicans either. We're running a platform on being a sanctuary, water, oil, and guns. We're going to talk about Second Amendment nullification because most of my people are very strong Second Amendment supporters. Gerrymandering in this case is really going to help me. Our district went from being very, very right-leaning to being considered the only toss-up district in the county. So that helps.
Okay, Scrivener, is your opponent, is he running? Is this a two-way race?
As of now, it is. So in 2004 he ran for re-election unopposed, and so 4 years later, on the day of open filing, three other candidates all put their name in, and they all said that if somebody had announced early, they wouldn't run. So being a libertarian, I'm going to need a little extra runway anyways to really connect with people. I'm announcing a year early. I mean, we're going to go for about 18 months, days of service in towns all over the district, letting people know who I am, the things that I think can be done better and different, and just really establishing myself as being different from the Republicans who really don't go far enough in anything. You know, they're not really Second Amendment supporters. They're not really free market supporters. They just are better on those issues than the Democrats. But better isn't good.
which wouldn't take much, I guess. Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, better isn't good, I guess. I mean, you know, that's like saying that I'm tall. I'm the tallest in my family, but I'm 5'9". That's not really saying much.
So you mentioned Second Amendment, and I looked at your website, and you're talking about making sure the sheriff doesn't unduly enforce Second Amendment regulations that are probably unconstitutional. Is that the route that you would take?
That is the route that I would take. I'm kind of on board with the whole 10th Amendment Center idea of nullification, using sheriff nullification and legislative nullification. You know, for instance, you know, gun control really isn't ever gun control. It's usually just punitively enforced, right? So who does it really affect? It only affects people that can't pay the fees. So all you've done is disarm your poor populations. But legislative nullification says that I can propose a rule saying that the Kern County Sheriff is not going to partner with the ATF enforcing the National Firearms Act of 1934. That means the ATF can still enforce that, but they're not going to be able to use my local sheriff to do it. Partnerships don't work unless everybody helps. So if we eliminate the partnership and we put it in law saying that Donnie Youngblood cannot take part in these things, and he can't.
Cannabis is another issue that is really interesting in California. It's ostensibly legal, both recreational and medicinally, throughout the state, but the administration of what makes it legal is left to counties and towns. How is Kern County handling it? Is it are they allowing cannabis grows and cannabis retailing and cannabis wholesaling?
So 2 cities in Kern County do. Arvin and California City both allow legal grow shops, legal shops in their towns. Nowhere else in the county has it. You are allowed to use like delivery services that are, of course, super expensive, and you have to wait hours for your delivery. But like the shop that are open, they can be raided at any time. So there is a solid prohibition on it, and it makes it dangerous. There was a story just a couple weeks ago where a shop was robbed.
For just a second, I'll be right back.
A shop was robbed, and so the men inside defended themselves, right? Because if someone pulls a gun on me, I'm fighting back. And the robber was killed. He was shot and killed.
Sorry about that.
Instead of being able to call the police, because of the prohibition, they boarded their walls up and left the guy sitting there in the parking lot. But if there had been a legal avenue for that shop to be open, they would have just called the police. It's the idea that the shops can make things more dangerous is silly. It's the black market is what we know makes things dangerous. So the shop around the corner from my mom's store was hit last week, and they came in. The girl came over. She was crying. It's scary. I was just minding my business, and there's shotguns in my face. She's like a 19-year-old girl. Are you kidding?
So what would you be able to do as a county supervisor to change the situation countywide?
We would propose legislation legalizing marijuana and ending the prohibition on it. We would, and whatever that looks like, right? Ultimately, the complaints about the shops are this: they're dirty, they're dangerous, and they smell. But these guys aren't incentivized to fix their locations up because they can be raided at any point. So we stop the Kern County Sheriff from enforcing the federal law, right? We just tell them you're not going to do this anymore. That's one step, and then through that'll force these shops to fix their buildings. They'll get permits. They'll monetize, right? They'll be able to charge tax. The biggest thing that I haven't really figured out how to do yet, but I would like to allow these shops to use banks. I mean, Richard, I don't know if you've ever been inside any of these, man, but like I've seen in the back, and they've got like safes full of cash, buckets of it, because they can't deposit their money in the bank. So now,
to answer your question, I have not been into a shop. I tried to go in one once and found out that I had to put my name on a statewide registry, and I decided I didn't want to do that. So I've never set foot actually inside of a shop, but I am aware that very large guards, very imposing looking bodyguards are guarding most marijuana shops simply because of all that cash laying around.
Yeah, they have to be. It's crazy, man.
No, I think I think that there are financial institutions that will handle transactions for pot stores. Unlike Richard, I didn't care that my name was on a statewide registry. I'm probably on so many watch lists now that adding myself to one more, because I write thrillers and I research stuff that is just, I'm sure I'm on lots of watch lists. And there are financial institutions that are willing. I think the workaround is at the federal level, any federally insured, they have to respond to federal government mandates and stuff like that. But if you're, a state registered, state of California,
like a credit union
or something like that. And I think some banks, because not that I've ever done this myself, but it's my understanding that you could go in and use a credit card or a debit. I think a debit card, and I'm not sure about a credit card, just a standard. I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want to promote them. But I think it's doable. Other people are doing it in the state. They're a lot of them also, they'll have an ATM machine in the thing and do it that way. But the cash, they're guys with not ballistic armor, but they're wearing bullet slowing vests. You don't want to call them bullet stopping vests because they won't stop a hunting rifle. And they're carrying, they have carry licenses and weapons and all the rest of that. And so, you'd have to think pretty hard about cracking one of those places. But then again, if you did that at one of these, I almost think the things that you have in your town, or I think of them as pop-up stores. They can't defend themselves. It's the same problem with, prostitution. When prostitution was legal, you wouldn't have pimps beating up prostitutes. So, they'd be guilty of assault on their workers and all the rest of that. But so there are ways other people are doing it, and I commend you for doing it, because the bummer about what the state of California has done is they've made the tax on the stuff so outrageous unless you have a medical card that people are going back to their local dealer because they can get the good stuff from them at a lower cost. So once again, California has managed to screw up a revenue stream. But anyway, I mean,
I just sold a house in Yolo County, and my daughter's in the market for a house in Orange County, and the prices of real estate have gone sky high. Is that the same in Kern County? And if so, how much of that is a result of government policy directly or indirectly?
Well, so I think just last week a report came out, and they're saying now they're claiming that 23% of the cost of the average home is government regulations and tariffs and fees. So, I mean, with that said, I think it's not the same as some places. So, for instance, my home, we bought it in 2013. We paid, I think, $95,000 for it, and it's worth like
wait a second, hold on. This is a house that's got plumbing for $95,000.
Yeah, it's that weird town. Like, it's straight, and this was in 2013. You know, my mom bought a house in 1996 when he moved here, and it was like the same cost. But now it's worth about triple. So, I mean, it is definitely going up quickly. But, I mean, even if I sold, I'd have to move out of state, right? I could never move anywhere else in the state. Even if I made all the cash on it, I'd be broke.
So what can you do at the county supervisor level to ameliorate the ridiculous inflation in the cost of homes? I realize part of it is due to federal money printing policy and other extraneous statewide forces, but at the county level, what can you do?
So I think the most important thing to do is we can waive all of the fees and associated at the county level, right? Anything that you pay, that if when you have an inspector come out, you're paying that fee, just not charging for it, you know, just letting these, like, helping eliminate any kind of cost we can. It would be several $1,000s at least that could be saved from just from eliminating some of those local and county fees. Outside of that, I think the idea is with Kern County getting marijuana legalized and getting hemp legalized, we need to ultimately, culturally, we have to stop using trees for paper and toilet paper and napkins, you know. I think that's part of it. Trees are we consider them renewable, but are they? I mean, how many decades you have to wait to cut that tree down again, right? So that's one of the things is we would just, by removing those prohibitions, we hopefully free markets will be able to shine, and just eliminating those fees that I'm able to. Obviously, I can't eliminate state rules that say every house has to have a solar panel on it now, but there are smaller ones that could be done locally.
Well, some of the other, I would assume you could also, you said inspectors fees, you could also say that, well, maybe inspections are not actually necessary, and let the buyer beware, or let them do their own inspections.
So funny thing that you would say that. I used to own a restaurant in my district called TK's Pizza in Tehachapi, California. And we had to bring the inspector out. He didn't check anything. He asked us what we did, and we just pointed, and he said, okay. And he signed off and left, and it cost me $300. And I'm like, and I looked at my buddy and I said, that was the most useless, like, expert that I've ever met in my life. Like, he didn't need to come here.
But you paid for it, I'm sure, one way or another.
Mailed them that. So what are the, can I interject a question here? What are the permit costs like in Kern County? They're outrageous in other places. Do you know what they are for single family home?
I don't. I'm going to have to look those up. Okay. And I'll get back to you on those.
Yeah, because in most places, there's no, it's basically a permit. And I hate calling it a permit as if the government has a right to give us permission to build a home, but that's what people call it. We should call it something else, like extortion. And it's a huge cost. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked, and I know Richard's got a couple other things he wants to discuss.
Yeah, one of the other things I'm interested in, one of the reasons why we're having a, how can I call it, a breakdown in political discourse is because we are not educating our children in the Constitution. We're not educating our children in, Western values. We're not educating children in how a civilization actually works. Education is a huge issue, and public education is essentially granting a monopoly to government supported unions whose members are primarily interested in making the union members better off, not the kids better off. What would you do to get at the base issue of a problem in education in Kern County?
Oh, man. Where do I begin with that, right? Sorry, my 4-year-old's knocking on the door. He's trying to get in. I locked him out. I think we're going to work towards some school choice. I would like to work into some of that. There's a couple organizations that are doing really good things, trying to push school choice. Where I am, we'd have to go to the next county. But the idea that the only people who can educate our kids is a government education, the problem is it's not education, it's propaganda. So I recently got into a discussion because somebody asked me, why don't you have your kids say the Pledge of Allegiance? I said, because they don't know what any of those words mean. My 5-year-old can't define indivisible. She has no idea what she's saying. but we teach these people it's the only right thing, right? So I'm a huge fan of like the acting academies. We've homeschooled one of my sons for a couple years while his behavior was bad. He was like the crazy one. And but things like that, I mean, we can't just keep empowering schools, but there are ways to work around that, right? Like teachers, I think we all will agree that the average teacher doesn't make enough money, but it's all by
I won't, but that's a different discussion. Yeah.
Well, not all of them. I have a brother that does quite well. I mean, let's be real, but he's also a high level teacher. He coaches sports, so he gets his other little chunks, but he doesn't even, like 62% of teachers, of public school teachers, 62% will at least 1 year of their kid's life send their child to private school. So if they're not using public school, why should we?
No, in LA County, I think it's over 60%. Well, in LA County is probably the worst school district in California, and the teachers are paid more than anybody else based upon their standard of living. But anyway, we could spend a whole show on that too.
Yeah,
so.
You're running in a nonpartisan race, right?
It's a nonpartisan race.
Okay. There's a precedent for a libertarian winning in a nonpartisan race. And of course, I'm talking about Jeff Hewitt, who won in Riverside County just last year or the year before, and is now running a credible campaign for governor. Do you see yourself following his example or doing some of the things that he did in order to be successful in running for county supervisor?
Yes, absolutely. Jeff Hewitt, I think, has kind of gotten the formula. He said himself, he's done it wrong enough times to kind of figure it out, right? He was going for the state house and he was going for state senate. Republicans win local. We win nonpartisan races, especially one-on-one. He only raised a third of what the other guy raised, and he creamed him. And I think he has a great opportunity to be the next governor. If there's none of the other guys are any good. John Cox is a joke with his stupid bear. And then Falconer is okay.
So what kind of a campaign are you running? Do you have a ground operation, door to door? Do you have billboards, advertising? What kind of is it? Are you looking for donations? So can people do that on your website? What's the nuts and bolts of your campaign?
So we are going to be real grassroots. We will be raising money. I'm not ready to raise money yet. I just launched last week, but it's going to be about service, volunteerism. One of the ways that we're gonna get out there is by doing property cleanups, and it's all about the money that's being charged, right? They're trying to raise an extra $2.5 million a year to pick up trash, like illegal dumping, but they're not going to use it for that. So the way that we get around those things is we eliminate the problem, and volunteerism is one of the ways to do that. And we will be raising donations. We will get some billboards put up across the district. Spending money on Facebook and doing things like that to just try to get people to the site. We have been doing a good job as far as me and a couple other guys just online and interacting with people, getting people to respond to the website. I've been getting questions asked almost every day that we've been able to respond to, and I think the response has been good. We're in a place that's really weird. 52% of the population of my district is Hispanic, but 70% of the voters tend to vote Republican. It's really weird. So I think I have some chance, some inroads. This guy, like I said, he's not popular. We're just gonna get out there. We're gonna knock on doors. We're gonna go for it.
You said you have a small business. What kind of business is it, and what's your stance on business regulation?
Oh man, so my mom has had this little variety store since I was in second grade. She's also rents the U-Haul truck. So anyone who moves into our town that gets a U-Haul truck has to use our business. I hate it, man. As far as like government regulations, like I don't have a restaurant anymore, but I remember how expensive that stupid health permit was every year. It was like $600 a year. It was crazy. For what? Like I have a serve safe. You're not going to get sick eating in my restaurant, regardless of if the health department is extorting me or not. So now we just have the store. It's a little store. She's getting older. My mom turned 71 in July. She'll be 71. And she's really finally thinking about not working anymore. I don't know what that means. She'll stay busy. But she's rented out half of the building now. So she's now a landlord for half her building. And she feels bad for them because they've converted half of her store into a little restaurant. And man, the inspectors that came through and all the times they were going to Bakersfield, that's 90 minutes away. We're killing our businesses with this regulations and and the payroll taxes are sky high. It's not fair.
As you have stated, and as other people are aware, a lot of the problems the counties face are problems that are imposed by the governor and by the state legislature. And of course, that's an entirely other story in terms of political corruption. One of the things that came to light recently is the fact that large corporations like, I don't know, PG&E, which doesn't have any problems at all with credibility, AT&T, Comcast, Kaiser, all have contributed over, I think it is $200,000 to something called the Representation Project, which is run by Jennifer Newsom, who is related, of course, to, as wife to the governor of the state. And of that, of those contributions, she's been taking home over $10 million over the, or what is it?
$250,000 a year.
$290,000 a year. 20% of what's been raised by that nonprofit goes directly into the pockets of the governor's wife. She's not the only one. There's a whole lot of governors' wives that do very well by doing good.
And wait, hold on.
Do very well. What?
President's wives, the Clinton Foundation presented a perfect template for I would say primarily Democratic governors, but I haven't looked at the Republicans. They're probably doing the same thing. You set up a nonprofit, put one of your relatives on it. I think one of the Clinton daughters was
Chelsea
she did some chair filling at the Clinton Foundation and was paid $500,000 a year. So you give a legal bribe to the family through their nonprofit, and then you have favorable legislation. It happens everywhere, and the template was presented by the former president and his lovely wife.
Yeah.
So I the people that are following that template are just doing what worked, and I think it's disgusting. Richard called me on using the word disgusting for something that wasn't disgusting, but this is disgusting, and I think it's a flat out, straight up conflict of interest, and I see we're almost out of time. So yeah, PG&E
they're still under investigation for murder. So my question is to Governor Newsom. Would you take if I murdered my next door neighbor? Would you take my campaign donations? Problem is he would say yes, right? But I mean, there's Brandon Rittiman. You guys are up in that area. I don't know if you know Brandon Rittiman. He's put together a program called Firepower Money. Watch that. He breaks down every dollar that PG&E has donated since they've been actively on probation and actively being investigated for murder. They've donated like $6 million to political campaigns, 10,000 of which came to Kern County to the Board of Supervisors, and they will not tell me where they donated it to. So at some point, I expect to be coming to a head with them, because my opponent, Zach Scribner, has been fined twice now by the FPPC for laundering campaign funds and misreporting. The problem is, here's where the corruption goes. His blood aunt, his relative aunt, is the district attorney. And she's been fined too for the same thing. She stole money. Cynthia Zimmer, if you heard me, you know that you're a criminal. You stole money too.
Okay, so in other words, it's not just a state level problem. Yeah. I think we're running out of time, but I appreciate you being on the show, discussing all of your issues. What's your campaign website, people, in case people in Kern County or elsewhere want to get in touch?
You can go to www.cardin4kern.com. My tags on social media are the same, at cardin4kern.com. Cardin, the number 4, kern.com.
And that's Cardin, CARDEN, right?
Yeah.
Good luck.
Hey,
good luck,
Thanks
Kelly.
for being on the show.
Nice getting to meet you and seeing you on the show. Appreciate it.
You guys, thank you. It was a blast.